What's up, everyone? You're listening to Delayed Reaction. I'm your host, Lilo, and in case you didn't know, this is the movie review podcast where I step back in time and watch some old movies and then I talk about them just for funsies. Today, we're going back to 2017 to watch and review a movie called John Wick Chapter 2, continuing in the John Wick series, which is fantastic by all means, but it's definitely hitting the whole declining returns situation. So, like I said, released in 2017, directed by the same director of John Wick, the first one, Chad Stahelski. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. But it stars Keanu Reeves, Lance Reddick, Ian McShane, the usual characters, but then it introduces some new characters like Common, who is also an assassin in this particular movie, Ruby Rose, who plays another assassin, but her character is actually pretty cool. She uses sign language. The assumption there is that she's deaf. Really cool, complete BA, amazing character. We'll talk about her later. And then Lawrence Fishburne, who is introduced as the Bowery King. If you haven't seen John Wick 2, this is your chance to back away now, as this is going to be your spoiler warning. I had to purchase this one, which I purchased a long time ago because I've bought all the John Wick movies, so there's that. But go ahead, check it out, and then come back and we'll dive in. Okay, you back? Did you watch it? Amazing. Let's go. So, John Wick Chapter 2, as the name implies, continues the Sisyphean task of John Wick trying to get out of the assassin lifestyle. So, in the first one, he got revenge on the Russian mafia. In the second one, he actually completes that story arc within the first maybe like 20 minutes of the movie, which absolutely is just banging. It's a solid 20 minutes of action from entry to the end of that whole sequence. And there's a moment where he goes up to, I'm guessing it's a secondary crime boss, but he's essentially the brother of the last mafia leader from John Wick 1. At the end, he's eliminated a really good number of this guy's henchmen and walks into the office, and you can see in the guy's face that he is just ready to be killed by the Baba Yaga. And instead, John Wick pours 2 glasses of vodka and holds up a toast to this gentleman and says, "Peace." And the guy says, "Okay." And from there, they cheers, they both take drinks, and John Wick pieces out of there. And so he, grabs his Mustang, which is part of the action in this sequence, and is just, beat to hell, and drives home. And there's maybe like 10, 15 minutes of just him trying to get back into things. He brings his car back to Aurelio from the first movie, who, is the assassin car fixer-upper guy. He buries his weapons in gold coins and essentially just goes on to have a nice quiet life with his new dog that he stole from a vet hospital. So, and then, of course, he can't have this quiet life. Someone from his past comes in and says that he's got this assassin's marker, which is basically like a contractual agreement that they have to fulfill, signed in blood, because of course assassins never deal in anything less than blood, right? John Wick refuses, and that's pretty much what sets this whole thing off, right? Because then this dude just goes on, blows up his house. Thankfully the dog lives, but now, John's house is blown up, and that's not cool. So from there, there becomes this series of events where it becomes like this chase between John Wick and the character Santino D'Antonio, who is trying to have his sister murdered because she's getting this seat at the high table, which is also cool. Let's talk about that for a sec. So John Wick Chapter 2 reveals that there is an overarching organization that sees basically how all assassins work. It's called the High Table, and it's run by, geez, I don't know if they even say. It's run by a number of people, very wealthy people. I'm assuming just loaded up with those assassin gold coins. They make decisions over everything. They run the show. They send out the contracts. They set up the whole organization and hierarchy for the thing. What John didn't realize was that, of course, there was going to be a plot twist: backstabbing. So John goes off, completes the task, shoots this guy's sister, and kills her. And then he comes back, reports back to Santino, and is like, "It's done." And Santino's like, "You wouldn't think I wouldn't avenge my sister, would you?" And then, of course, he starts blasting at John Wick, which, as we all know, was a mistake. So there are a number of scenes, and of course, at the very end, so actually, it's pretty wild the way that it ends. So you think that, actually, no, you don't think. It's pretty obvious what ends up happening, right? So John is pursuing Santino with the full brunt of John Wick's abilities. And then Santino, in his brilliance, is like, "I'm just going to go hide out at the Continental." Because if we remember from the last movie, the Continental is where no business can happen. It's a safe haven for assassins where they trade in gold coins and fun jazz and some kicky drinks. So John Wick pops in, all beat up, finds Santino eating a lovely steak dinner. I can only imagine. John is pissed, and he's arguing with Santino, and you see Ian McShane's character Winston just come up, and he's just like, "John, don't do this. There can't be blood on continental grounds." And John Wick just straight shoots the guy in the hotel mid dinner, and it is brutal. There's like no music in the background. It's dead silent because of the massive transgression that's happened. And so John leaves, and Winston's like, "I have to consider you excommunicado from the Continental. So no more gallivanting in the Continental. No more going off to fancy international versions of the Continental." Because there is a scene where he goes to the Continental in Italy, and of course it's like luxurious and opulent and whatever. We'll talk about a scene in there a little bit later. And so from that point on, it sets up the third movie, which I'll cover in another episode. But it sets up the whole third movie where now John is excommunicado. But on top of that, they've set up this bounty on him, essentially. I think it's $1 million bounty or $2 million bounty. I can't remember. And Winston shows his hand pretty cleverly. So like they meet at this park, or they a park, Central Park, excuse me. Sorry, New Yorkers, if you're listening. They meet within Central Park. You're just wondering this entire time, like, he's going out in the open. There's so many people here. It's in the daytime. Winston calls in the bounty. They're exchanging words, and Winston's like, "Now every assassin is going to be out to get you." And you see this scene where Winston holds up his phone and says the word "stop," I believe. And literally everyone in this plaza just stops in their tracks, just insinuating that Winston is wildly powerful. So then John Wick is on the run, and while he's on the run, he runs into someone called the Bowery King, who is essentially the opposite of the High Table. And that's played by Lawrence Fishburne. And so it's cool because then it's like you get this cool reunion between Lawrence Fishburne and Keanu Reeves, like the whole Matrix thing, right? The Bowery King essentially controls the assassins of, you can't really call it like the underworld, because like the assassins already have their own underworld, and you've got like the Bowery King who runs his assassins organization as like homeless folks. And it's this whole thing where, resources are limited, but he runs all of it. And of course, like there's like this It was like an understated thing where it's like there's just a ton of homeless people in New York, and they just all happen to be assassins. So that's exciting. And so they team up at the end, and that's where it leaves off. And so now he's just being chased by assassins everywhere. All that being said, a few things that I personally enjoyed. There's a sequence in Italy when John is pursuing Santino and his sister, and he stops off at the Continental, like I had mentioned earlier. So he says, "Is the sommelier in the wine guy for us regular people?" And he goes in, and instead of selling wine, dude's just got an entire armory. He is like the fanciest gun dealer I've ever seen in my life, and they talk about the weaponry as if it were like courses and a meal, and it's just so much fun. Oh, he also goes to see a tailor because he needs a new suit, and he's like, "I need a suit," and so they take him into the back room, and because he slips one of the seamstresses a gold coin, which is the international symbol for one, I'm paying you, and two, I am in fact a high rolling assassin. So slips this coin to this person. They go to the back room, and he's like, "I need a suit for day and for night." And they go through like this whole thing of like how the suit is constructed and how there's armor built into the suit. There's a scene where the lady that he gave the coin to just unloads a clip into one of these suit jackets, and there's like no damage. And they're like, this is the armor that we've sewn into the lining of the coat. And you're like, that's okay, all right. And it's just such a fun scene to kind of see how like this weird high society of assassins actually works and is kind of organized. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, having seen all of the John Wicks as well, which we'll talk about in later episodes, there is a formula to them, right? So it's like there's a conflict, car chase, fight scenes, escalating danger, and there's also, for some reason, like an obligatory rave. I, I don't know why this happens, but this happens in every John Wick movie. There is an obligatory rave where some fight breaks out. There is literal like gunshots in the midst of a dance floor where there's people all over, and the only people that die are, of course, the killers. Because that's just how things work in these movies. So this one just happens to be massive, and it's outdoors and in Italy. But there are like other. There was a rave scene in the first John Wick, and then there's rave scenes in 3 and 4 as well. So that's exciting. Okay, the last thing that I'll bring up, there was the scene when Winston calls for John Wick's bounty to be in place. And actually, even before then, when Santino, because Santino also calls in a bounty because, of course, he is, because he's a jerk face. When they call in the bounties, they call into this phone bank of operators, and it's all these women. They're all tattooed, and they look very much like 1920s pinup girls, which is one, pretty rad, and two, everything is like this old retro technology. So they have like the switchboards which use the wires where they just connect from plug to plug. They've got like the big chunky computers with like just the green screen, and they print stuff out on like the cool dot matrix printers. And it's just a really cool vibe, right? Because they live in a modern society, and they all have cell phones, and they all have kind of that aesthetic. But then behind the scenes, it's like this wild retro feel, which is, I thought, was pretty cool. They play a part in the third movie as well. Minor spoilers. But yeah, I mean, as much fun as John Wick 2 was, like I said, it starts to kind of hit that diminishing returns thing where it's like it becomes fairly repetitive. You can kind of see where things are going to go as the movie progresses. I think overall, I'd probably give this one a 3.5 out of 5. It's a good watch. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's absolutely one that you just kind of shut your brain off for a little while and enjoy the boom booms and the flashy flash. But that's about it. There's no consideration of like the future. There's no like deep underlying questions. It's just what you see is what you get, which is fantastic in a lot of different places. But let me know what you think of John Wick Chapter 2. Have you seen it? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was a waste of time? Let me know. Put those in the comments. And yeah, happy to chat more about it there. But thanks so much for listening. And until next time.